This is what Elon Musk said about China.
Well, I think China's a real interesting country, I have to say. The thing to appreciate about China is just that there's a lot of really smart, really hardworking people there, and they're going to do a lot of great things. This is sort of, independent of Chinese government policy. They're just going to do a lot of interesting things. The thing that will feel pretty strange is that the Chinese economy is going to be probably at least twice as big as the U.S. economy. Maybe 3 times, but at least twice. And that assumes a GDP per capita still less than the U.S. But since they have about 4 or 5 times the population, then it would only require getting to a GDP per capita of half the United States for their economy to be twice the size of ours. And as I'm sure people in this room know, the foundation of war is economics. And so if you have half the resources of the counterparty, then you better be real innovative. If you're not innovative, you're going to lose.
Elon Musk predicted that China is on track to overtake the United States as the world's largest economy. He mentioned that China's GDP could end up being at least twice the size of the US economy, even if their GDP per capita remains lower. The reasoning is simple. China's population is around 4 to 5 times larger than that of the US. So if China's GDP per capita reaches just half of what the US has, their overall economy would still be twice as big. This is a major reason why so many American businesses have chosen to invest in China and set up their factories there instead of in other countries. By 2023, India has overtaken China to become the most populous country in the world, which also means that India's labor force could soon be larger than China's. But the situation isn't that simple. Even though India's overall population is bigger, not everyone of working age is actually part of the labor force. According to the International Economic Association, China's labor force participation rate in 2021 was 75.8%, while India's was only 51.3%. On top of that, India has a much lower female participation rate compared to China. China and India are both set to be major players in the world economy, but their consumer classes have some clear differences. According to the Brookings Institute, China currently has the largest consumer class with 899 million people, while India's consumer class is only about half that size, at 473 million, and it's predicted that China will keep the lead for at least the next 2 decades. China is on track to become the first country with 1 billion people in the consumer class, likely around 2026 to 2027. Another big difference is where these consumers live. In China, 4 out of every 5 consumers are in cities, making the consumer class mostly urban. In contrast, India's consumer class is much more spread out, with only about half living in urban areas. By 2030, an estimated 553 million people in China will be living in large cities with populations of over 1 million, compared to just 290 million in India. This suggests that even as India's consumer class grows, it will be harder to reach than China's. These differences help explain why most American businesses have chosen to invest in China over other emerging markets like India. While India is on the rise and has a promising economic future, China is still seen as the best place to do business. Both China and India are expected to add over 500 million new consumers each, which will account for 55% of the global total and about $9 trillion in annual spending, making up 42% of the global total. This is a big reason why so many people are optimistic about Asia's future, calling this century Asia's century. Another factor that draws businesses to China over other countries is the skill level of the Chinese workforce, something that Apple's CEO, Tim Cook, has highlighted as a key advantage.
There's a confusion about China that, and let me at least give you my opinion. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. And that is not the reason to come to China from a supply point of view. The reason is because of the skill and the quantity of skill in one location and the type of skill it is. Like the products we do require really advanced tooling. And the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. You know, in the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers, and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. It's that vocational expertise is very deep, very, very deep here. And I give the education system a lot of credit for continuing to push on that, even when others were de-emphasizing vocational. Now I think many countries in the world have woke up and said, you know, this is a key thing, and we've got to correct that. But China called that right from the beginning.
A lot of people think Apple products are made in China just because labor is cheap there, but that's only part of the story, and it's becoming a smaller part as Apple's manufacturing partners shift toward more automation. Steve Jobs moved most of Apple's manufacturing to China because it was the only country with a massive, ready-made supply chain and the ability to ramp up production almost overnight. On top of that, China's development didn't collapse as some predicted with the China collapse theory, nor is it expected to peak anytime soon, despite what the China peak theory suggests. Even with US sanctions and a shaky real estate market, China's economy is still going strong. In 2023, China's GDP surpassed RMB 126 trillion yuan, growing by 5.2% from the previous year, a growth rate that's among the highest of the world's major economies. China also contributed over 30% to global economic growth, continuing to be the biggest engine for the world economy. Perhaps the best explanation for why so many businesses focus on China comes from Maximilian Butek, the executive director of the German Chamber of Commerce in China.
The biggest risk now is that the world continues to decouple. Of course, we have to stay in China to remain competitive. For the company itself, it's still a huge risk not being in China. We are welcoming a lot of CEOs coming to China. It's difficult to understand for anyone outside of China how innovative China became. And this mainly within the last 5 years, how rapid this development was and under high quality. It's also difficult to see how interlinked German companies are with Chinese companies here in the market. When they come here, they are all surprised how smooth also these corporations work and how efficient R&D, for example, and innovation can happen here in China. It used to be we bring technology to China, then we came to a stage we innovate in China for China, and now probably we see more and more innovations which come from China to the global. When you make it in China, when you survive in China, you can survive all over the world. China is changing so fast. It's more about, are you willing to learn and to get involved with China well enough?
Do you think it's a big risk for a business not to be in China? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to show your support.